Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome. I am your host, Brenda Williams, founder of Culture Shifters Unite, and the proud host of the podcast, Soul of a Lead Her, for she who lives and works from the soul. And I am here with the person that makes it all happen. So, Bethany Hawkins is the founder and CEO of Crackers in Soup, an award winning podcasting, yes, award winning, you heard it right, production company, and so much more. And they center the voices of BIPOC women, BIPOC individuals, and giving them the platform and the tools and the wherewithal to not only launch their podcast, but to have sustainable, long lasting, avoid the pod fade, because that is a thing, um, in their podcast journey. And she is with you every step of the way, from not only your graphic design, but also your technical, your audio, your sound, but also your message and delivery. When I say Bethany has listened to every single episode that I have uploaded with care, with candor, with support and love, with intuition. She's also a highly intuitive, highly sensitive person, so she gets it. So not only what you want to say, but the intention behind what you're saying and making those strong connections to your listeners. So without further ado, I want to bring on our amazing guest today, Bethany Hawkins.
Thank you, Brenda Williams. I just want to put you in my pocket and carry you around and just whenever I'm feeling like, am I enough? Imposter syndrome's creeped in. I'll be like, boop, let me take Brenda out of my pocket. I'll be like, hey, girl, hey. I'll be like, you've
Hey,
been in
girl,
there for a
hey.
long time. You want some juice? You thirsty? You want some water? And
Talk to
I
me,
do
girl.
have to just say, it's so funny because your name says Brenda Williams dash cult for culture shifters, and mine says Bethany Hawkins dash crack. So it looks like cult
Oh,
and crack.
crap.
And I just don't even know what to do with that
We should
information.
become a rock band.
I
That's what we do
mean,
with it. We need to become a dynamic duo rock band. We can be like the female version of like Tears for Fears or something like that. Cult crack. I
yes.
love it.
Yes. I
We
can't
can,
sing. I can't play any instruments, but I will be there.
doesn't matter. It just sounds really cool. We'll figure it out. We can
We'll
be
figure it
part
out.
of like the cult crack for the next Lollapalooza. Like
Yes.
we're yes, okay. The next Coachella featuring cult crack.
Featuring
I
cult crack.
love it.
We'll be like
Uh,
just humming about spirituality. That's all that we'll be doing.
you know what? That's what you know what? So then we could have maybe Beautiful Chorus join us.
Yes. Yes.
So Beautiful Chorus, if you're listening to us, if you catch this and if somehow it flows to you, Cult Crack would like to do it.
Cult Crack would like to do something with
Something
you.
with
We'd
you.
like to engage. We'd like to
Yes.
have a something something.
Maxwell,
There's
what you
a
listening to? Something, something like,
little something something.
is it cool? We can do a little something, something. Okay, so this is what happens when you have
Every
two
time.
empathic, neurodivergent, ADD folks getting it together. This is literally what our behind the scenes looks like when we get on to talk about what the season is going to look like. I swear to Moses, it's like 30 minutes of just like antics first before we get into like the business of things. We get carried away and it's awesome. So I also want to let center for our neurodivergent folks, neurospicy, um, all of the things, right? You can do this. You have been doing hard things in your business. You can do this. This does not have to be hard. It won't be hard when you have a Bethany Hawkins in your pocket. And so, our quick story, just so to level set for everyone, Bethany was actually my virtual assistant, and she told me she was leaving me. And I was devastated and heartbroken because her heart was really in podcasting. Like, she found this calling of her soul. She loves doing it, and she was leaving me. I was not happy. I don't think any of her clients were happy, but I was happy because she found the thing that lit her up. And then I think maybe over the course of maybe it took 2 years, maybe a little less, for us to like sync back up. And I was like, hey, I'm ready. I think I want to do a podcast again. So when we talk about podcasting and full transparency, I have had 3 failed podcasts. No, let me take that back. I had 2 podcasts that taught me about podcasting. My third iteration of a podcast is exceeding my wildest expectations and dreams. And enter Bethany Hawkins. So Bethany, if you can center for people, because it would take longer than the 25 minutes that we have to really get into all of the heartbreak, the setbacks, the things that I didn't know, questions that I didn't know to ask, even managing like my own expectations of what a first season maybe probably even should have looked like. And you made an amazing post about what your first season of podcasting looks like, what to expect. So, for those of us who are considering podcasting, or even if you are a seasoned podcaster, I think that there's reasonable expectations, reasonable goals to set. And of course, everything starts with our intention. So, Bethany, if you could answer, some of that for us, what should we be expecting in our first year of our podcast?
So before I answer that, I would love to invite people to start thinking about why they are creating this podcast. Before we talk about seasons, before we talk about tech, before we talk about all of the things that people think about when they hear or want to create a podcast, I want to know your why. And Brenda, you know this very well about me. I am all about whys because things get hard and things get complicated and things get overwhelming and things in life be lifing. And if you can't extrapolate that why, you're not going to want to do your podcast anymore. That
Mm,
why and honing in before you even hit record, honing in on what this podcast is going to do for you and do for others. Are you looking to create this podcast to enhance your business? Are you looking to help people in a way that is a free resource if you're doing a public podcast? Are you looking to share your genius and your knowledge? Are you looking for it to be a stepping stone to potentially being a speaker? And you want to hone in your skills in speaking and or interviewing. You want to increase your knowledge on how to go about speaking to individuals or speaking about your genius. So, all of these reasons are really vital before you even create your season one. And having them written down, you can do a Google Doc. I'm old school, writing it on a piece of paper and sticking it someplace that you can refer to on a regular basis is very important. And it'll just bring you back and center you when you're like, my internet went out and I have an interview. Bah! And it'll
we get
make
all
you
of
less likely to give up. So, thank you for letting me say that. Having said all of that, season one, I always say to anybody who will listen to me, is for learning. I've had people come to me and say, I want to create a podcast and I want to, at the end of this podcast, have 10,000 downloads and I want to interview the highest of the highest of the high. And I say, okay. And also, why do you want these things? Why do you want 10,000 downloads in your first episode? Well, I want to reach people and I want to help them with what I'm sharing. Well, why does it have to be that 10,000?
mm,
Weren't you, will you be satisfied if you have 100 people listening per episode and they are really implementing what you've taught them in that episode? Well, of
mm,
course I would. Okay, so why are we reaching for this number? If your main goal is to teach and inspire, you can do that without beating yourself up because you didn't
mm.
get this intangible number that you had created in your mind that this is what success is going to equate to. So, season one is, when I say season one is for learning, it's for listening back into seeing what works, what didn't work, and how you're going to navigate introducing what did work into season 2 and how you're going to curtail the things that didn't work and create new things. So, season 1 is really when you go swimming and you are a little tyke. You have your little floaties on. In my case, I had my little chubby thighs and my bathing suit, and I was just learning to doggy paddle. Season 1 is the doggy paddle floaty stage. Can you imagine if I had said to you, you're swimming for the first time, you're going to do 30 laps on your first day swimming in an Olympic sized pool?
Hmm.
You drowned. So set yourself up for success. Take these small steps to know and build your foundation for your podcast so you don't drown. And a lot of people think, okay, I want to get these 10,000 episodes. I want to get these 10,000 downloads, excuse me. Well, a lot can happen when you reach that pinnacle point. You could start getting ad sponsors. You can start getting people who you do admire wanting to be a guest. People can start reaching out to you and want you to be a speaker on their platform. Are you ready for that? You can not only drown when you don't hit those measures, you can drown if you do hit them and you aren't ready. So get yourself ready.
Mm. Mm. Sister Hawkins is preaching on today. Do you hear me? Hallelujah. Thank you. Listen, Bethany, when I say just even 2-for-1 ministry, so um spirit of full transparency, when Bethany and I started working together that first season, my mother was diagnosed with lung cancer and eventually through the episode went into hospice. So literally that first season was under caregiving, under stress, and I would say several times she would tell me, scale back, scale back. I was in a place, y'all. She said, just do solo episodes. It never would have occurred to me to do that. I thought I had to go out and get guests and you have to do all these things to make it a successful. I think that season we only had 3 guests that whole season. We did 9 episodes. Praise God, sponsored. But what I'm getting at and what Bethany is getting at about honoring where you are in your journey. There's nothing wrong with being a beginner. There's nothing wrong with taking things slow. And there's nothing wrong with simplifying when life is giving you big indicators that simple and surrender are required. And this one right here held me, cried with me behind the scenes on many of those episodes, cried with me during some of those episodes. I would say season 1, one of our most memorable episodes, I would say, was the honoring where you are, the panel. We talked with a PR professional, Deja Monet, Meg Collier, and Keena Baker, all about running your business um, when your life's on fire. Like, you know, how do you do it when you are caregiving or going through a divorce or, mitigating some, managing some sort of loss and grief. I think there's a human element that goes to this that Bethany definitely holds your hand through. So on top of learning how to do it, you could be in a particular life cycle. And I think that needs to be named too. I mean, Bethany, we've stopped and started. So we learned, and we can now talk about like what things look like in the second season. We learned so much about season 1 that when we moved to season 2, I think we learned, let's batch them, record all your episodes, and we'll drop them like every 2 weeks. And when I say, because then the transition came, part 2, father with dementia, it saved me so much to have those pre-recorded podcasts. So, yeah, take us into what things may look like in season two.
And I think that this very much aligns with trust. When you know your why, when you know your mission for your podcast, and you allow people into your life to not only help you with the tangible things, but trust and walk with you through your bandwidth and through life's journey,
Mm,
it makes it easier for you to want to continue. So just imagine if when you had reached out to me and said, here is where I am in season one. I'm getting the interviews, but girl, I'm tired. And I don't know if I can record this episode. And I said to you, bitch, you better record that episode. You'd be like, what? What? And I think that that's when it's so vital when you bring people in who just get you.
mm,
And if people aren't understanding, it just makes everything so much harder. And it makes it harder to implement all the things that you learned for season two. So in season two, you were rocking and rolling. Not only were you acclimated to the setup, not only were you able to hear the feedback. Before I even gave you the feedback, you were like, in this episode, this happened. I just want to make you aware. And I'm like, I don't even need to tell Brenda because she just knows. Because that's part of the journey too. That a podcast producer worth their salt isn't just, I shouldn't say just, isn't only editing and creating graphics and doing show notes and uploading into podcast hosting station. We do all of those things. But they're also providing feedback. They're also saying, this is where you were phenomenal.
mm-hmm.
And this could maybe use a little tweak. And time again, we had conversations regarding your audio. Because of the circumstances were what they were, you weren't getting that crisp audio that we wanted you both to have.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked with it, and it is what it is. And that's okay. So for season 3, we're going to really hone in
Listen.
on, because you have the interviewing down pat. You have the people that you want to down pat. You have your solo information. You could do that with your eyes closed. You can inspire just by waking up in the morning. So season 3, you honing in on that audio, forget it. You're going to be the whole entire package. But having somebody in your corner, there was one meet every 4th episode. We're supposed to be scheduled to have a meeting. There was one meeting where you just shared and you just cried and I just held space for you. And sometimes that's what you need. You don't need a podcast producer. You need a friend. You need somebody to hear you and somebody to see you.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't understand if they haven't created a podcast. Creating a podcast is a very creative endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
It is tapping into your creativity, your intuition, your natural being and sharing and communicating. All of those things aren't physical labor, but it's emotional labor. So if you're emotionally exhausted, it is so hard for you to show up for your podcast. And also, if you do show up exhausted, your audience can feel that. Your audience listeners, especially if they are following your podcast and they subscribe to your podcast, it is a relationship that's curated
Mm-hmm.
and it's empathic. So if you're showing up under duress, they feel that tension because for the majority of the time, they're just listening, they're just using one sense. They're
Mm.
using their hearing to feel what you're conveying. So they can't, so you could be smiling even though you're crying on the inside. They can't see you smiling if it's not, if they're not watching a video, if they're just listening to your audio, but they can feel that tension and that upset. And if you trust your audience to let them into your world like you do so brilliantly, especially in the wrap up of season 2, you share with them. Season 2 was dedicated to my mom, and it was a journey. And it was the 5 stages of grief. And that cycle still continues to come back because grief is lifelong lasting. And some days are amazing, and some days it could be 20 years later, not so great.
Whew.
And that is all part of creating a podcast that is going to impact and change lives.
I of course I'm getting emotional behind that because I was listening to a Brene Brown podcast on grief, and they mentioned that there's now a sixth stage of grief.
Mm.
And Bethany, you helped me get to the sixth stage of grief, which is meaning. So yes, the whole season we started out with one of my mother's girlfriends, and that was a very emotional episode. But yes, the whole season dedicated to my mother's legacy. It helped give my life even more meaning of what it means to be Bernadine's daughter,
Mm-hmm.
but letting the world know who my mother is, was, and will be through me.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those who loved her, cherished her, honored her. This podcast, of course, now will take on another meaning. You know, initially, yes, I want to connect, I want to talk about the feminine spirit, and I want to be holistic, and I want to blend spirituality and business and social justice because those, yes, all the things that make me a creativity. But I think now it's even deeper. This is legacy work for me. This is for all of the girls that participated in the power of girlhood who are young women now. Some of them mothers, some of them are in relationship. This is for my community. I'm from the Metro Detroit area. This is for my city. So while I have local impact, I can have global reach with a podcast. So I can reach people beyond. Tell a story or a narrative about, we're going to keep it 100, a gentrified area. You're not always going to get the homegrown narrative. You'll get whatever PR spin is being, produced about an area that's being gentrified. I
Mm-hmm.
want you to feel my city, the realness, the real Detroit, the Motown, where we got the sound from, where we, Barry Gordy, like that's real. Yes, we're automotive, but we're more than that. You can hear that in the, I trust that you can hear that in the podcast episode. So Bethany, I love how you are really helping us crescendo. So what happens for us in our third season and beyond?
The third season is to take all of that you've learned in the first and the second, and that's when you want to monetize. And I love what you had just said because you are creating historical archives.
Mm-hmm.
You are creating something that somebody can go back to and listen to 5, 10, 15 years plus down the road. So in the season 3 journey, you had already done it with 1 and 2. You had already gotten sponsors for your podcast just on you sharing your idea of what you want this podcast to be. A lot of people haven't gotten to that point yet. But now, if they've continued to hone their craft, this is where they're going to start venturing out. This is when they're going to do their bigger reach, because now they have documents and they can share episodes on why they're phenomenal. And they can take the episodes from season 1 and the episodes from season 2 and they can bulk them. So if you wanted to do a newsletter and you wanted to share, these are the episodes for my podcast that I talk about grief. These are the episodes in my podcast that I talk about spirituality. These are the episodes in my podcast that I talk about business. So you're now taking all of the information that you've provided and you're putting them together so that it makes it easier for a new audience to find you, to understand you, and to grasp the concept. And then if you're looking for sponsors or you're looking for that guest that you wanted in your first season, you can take those and you can say, these are my favorite episodes. I would love to hear your reflection on what you think about them. And start that rapport, start that cadence, start that conversation. Because the most important thing that you're going to do when you seek sponsors, when you seek that unicorn guest, that first starts with some kind of rapport.
Yeah.
It starts with an email. It starts with a reach out. And if you can start speaking to them one-on-one in a friendship way, and not as a, hey, I'm gonna become your friend just so I can get something out of you,
No,
but
right.
just for a real human connection. And then if it goes to something else, great. But if it doesn't, you at least have this person in your corner. Stop working and engaging with people just because you see foldable dollar bills.
Listen, that transactional.
Stop it.
Stop it. It's
Just stop
ugly.
doing that.
We see it. We feel
It's
it.
a
We know
weird energy.
weird.
Just stop doing that. If you find somebody that you're like, oh my God, I adore you, and you own a store, what? Or if you go to the same store every Friday to pick up your tarot cards or to pick up some incense or to pick up some sage, and they know you by heart and they're like, Brenda, hey, I have a podcast. I would love for you to be a sponsor because I love your products. Is that something that you're interested in?
Listen.
That necklace that you have on, fire. Hey, I purchased my all of my jewelry here. It's absolutely stunning. Every guest that I talk to says, "Where did you get that? I need me some of that." Would you want to be a sponsor? Can I get a 15% off discount link? How can this work for both of us? Start engaging when you're looking for sponsorships with people that you already speak to and things that you already know. Stop trying to find headspace to sponsor you. Go to your locals. Find your people. It doesn't even have to be on the topic that you're talking about for your podcast. If your podcast is, I don't know, hard political times in 2025 in the US of A, but you drink one particular coffee every morning and you're on video sipping that coffee saying, I cannot have this discussion without my 8-hour coffee. Nom, 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 nom. Send them the clip of you talking about that and say, I need my 8-hour coffee to get through the day. And I talk about it every single time I start my podcast. Would this be an interest of you for you to sponsor my podcast? The worst that they can say is no. The best that they can do is you're also on their radar. They say yes. Even if they don't say yes, even if they say no, it doesn't mean never. Stay on their radar. And that could come to fruition the way that you want it to.
I love that so much because, yes, people are like, oh, I want Headspace, Voo Glam, or, all. to sponsor my podcast. And I'm not saying that that's an impossibility. Don't aim for the stars. But what are the local, where do you go to get your glasses in your neighborhood? You know, where, who are the local, if you want mental health, like where are the local mental health professionals? Think about your alma mater. If you went to a college or a university, what about their psychology department, social worker? You have a relationship there. And that's the way I teach when I do my sponsorship training is think about where you already have warm relationships,
Mm-hmm.
where you've fiscally maybe have already invested. And then that way it truly is a win-win. You're not just arbitrarily, I mean, yeah, headspace, but let's be, they have big numbers. So yeah, you want big numbers. But what I have found over the years, Bethany, honest to goodness, is really not about numbers. It's about engagement.
Yes.
And remember when you were helping me as a virtual assistant, I was doing like summits left and right.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my little teeny tiny list and I was still doing summits left and right
Mm-hmm.
because I had a great open rate.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have 10,000 people on your list, 10,000, quote unquote, like subscribers or down. But what does that really mean? Are they going back to listen to your episode? Are they engaging with the episode?
Mm-hmm.
Where is the feedback? I rather have five strong. And this is my running joke. I said, Jesus had 12 men. If he had had six women, he would have got the job done in less time and less headache.
Mm-hmm. That part.
So big Jesus, when you come back, six women. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to get six. See, get six black women.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
We're taking a break, but we'll look. We'll tap back in for you, Jesus.
Yes.
We'll tap back in for you. We
The
on
Eagles
break right now.
quarterback knows. He knew. He
Right.
knew. And he
Listen.
won the Super Bowl.
Okay. Just saying. Fum, 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 fum. But yes, ma'am. I love this conversation and I love what you're bringing home and centering for people. So as we go to that third season and beyond, as we look at sponsorships intentionally, and as we look at, sometimes, we want to go out and get $1,000 worth of equipment that we don't even know how to use. And then now it's collecting dust because you didn't even know how to, you got a whole switchboard that you don't, and it's like, wait a minute. Or, you want to move from, and there's nothing wrong with your living room to now you want to be at a coffee house or you want to be at a stadium or because I mean there's all different types of podcasting, right? You have the on-site live streaming video component, you have not just the audio but now what do you say about those who want to now move to like that expansion level? What are some considerations that maybe we need to make?
I want you to have a full budget plan for your podcast prior to you buying one thing or transitioning over to a studio. I want you to have a full budget plan for not only your next season, but 2 more seasons thereafter.
Mm.
Because you want whatever quality you're bringing to your audience, you want that to be sustainable. So if you go to this fancy place that has all of these really amazing ways to enhance your audio quality, and then you can't afford it anymore, and you're recording in a box down in front of Starbucks, your audience is going to say, "What happened? And why did it happen?" So, really taking the time to map out your budget plan for your next 3 seasons and really take the opportunity again to look at your bandwidth. If you book a studio, but you have 6 kids, 3 dogs, and a hedgehog, and none of those things can be by themselves, it's like people who pay monthly to go to the gym and never ever go. But then if there's a treadmill in their house that they are forced to pass every day, they'll actually get on the treadmill because it'll like guilt them into doing it. It's essentially the same thing. Don't pay for something and then just not go because your bandwidth and your lifestyle doesn't allow you to do that.
Mm.
So map out your budget plan, look at your bandwidth, look at what you have the energy for. If you wake up in the morning, if you're a morning person and you're like, I already have my microphone downstairs, I have my plug in headphones, I have, according to you now, your Mac. Let me record something real quick. And you're more apt to do that than work an entire full day, deal with your 6 kids, your 3 dogs, and your hedgehog, and then drive to the studio during rush hour traffic. And you're like, that's just not even in my cards. Don't do things because other people are doing them. If you are very averse to showing up on camera and your zone of genius is only in audio, boo. You don't have to have a video YouTube podcast. It's okay. You can have an audio. Really tapping into yourself, I guess, is the overarching
Come on.
umbrella of this conversation. Know who you are. To thy own self be true.
Woo!
Willie S. said it, wrote it a long time ago. Hold on to Willie S.'s words. To thy own self be true. Don't be doing things just because somebody else is doing them, because you don't know
You don't
the
know.
help that that other person can have that maybe you don't have. But if you showing up as yourself in your bandwidth, within your budget, is going to allow you to continue on this journey, that's what you have to do and nothing more.
Oof. And with that, the whole church said, Amen. That is a word, Bethany Hawkins. Spirit is using you. You are a vessel. And I really hope that, as you listen to this in the replay, share this with someone, share this with someone who has a podcast or is thinking about starting a podcast. And no matter where you are in your podcasting journey, there are people that have been doing it since people were like, podcasting what? Right? But I think that it's so important to come back to what you said, your to thine own self be true. And I think that that's really the journey and the investigation of even knowing who you are, right? Because I mean, we're in a world, unfortunately, the shadow side of social media is that everyone's an influencer, be an influencer. I went to a conference for traditional journalists, and it was interesting. They were all trying to get out and get into podcasting. That's how powerful podcasting is, that traditional journalists are looking at getting into podcasts. So that's the power of it, right? But like we talked about pod fade, I had 3 attempts at it. This is the most successful attempt at it, but I take nothing. Um, I would take nothing for the journey, because every part that I thought was a failure was, okay, I learned this about what it takes. I learned this about myself, what it takes for me, honoring where I am, knowing that I don't have to know everything. That's not required.
Mm-hmm.
But the honoring the intention, behind why do we want to do this? What do we intend for the listener to get on the other side of it? And interestingly enough, as I'm expanding my own healing journey and process, it's like, maybe I want to have other genders, on the podcast. Why does it have to be? I mean, even though it's the soul of a lead her, I am the her, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to necessarily be a her that I interview. And what I'm finding is what I'm offering, other genders enjoy too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love what I saw just yesterday, Dan Rather. Dan Rather is getting a podcast.
Let's go, Dan Rather.
Let's go, Dan Rather. Get it. Get all of it.
Get all of it. So as we close, Bethany, I'd love to hear from you. And this is for poops and ha-has. Um, what are some of your favorite podcasts? Like, what are you personally listening to right now? And what can we look forward to in the next season and incarnation of Crackers and Soup?
So this is a great question. Ironically enough, listened to the majority of my clientele are interview style podcasts. I have a handful that are narrative style, which we do voiceover. It's like the whole story format. Uh, but because I listen to so many interview style and narrative style for work, the majority of podcasts that I listen to are storytelling. So, and it runs the gamut of fiction and nonfiction. So, the genre is pretty much scary. So, I listen to like scary pastas essentially, and or I'll listen to historical scary podcasts like Lore. My daughter introduced me to Mr. Ballin, who has a lot of like mystery style podcast or medical mysteries. So those are the ones that I tend to gravitate more towards now, that I'm like, tell me a story in lieu of interview style and or narrative. The next iteration of Crackers and Soup. This is the same question in the vein of, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Girl, I don't know. So I'm just here for the ride. Crackers and Soup has taken me into so many different adventures that I didn't anticipate and see. And it is always just such a shock in the best possible way for me to step into that next iteration. So I don't know. Right now we're continuing to do the things that we love and work with the clients that we love. I'm very fortunate that I get to be very selective on who we onboard as clientele. And I say that we are a very boutique type of podcast production agency, because we do a lot of that very personal touches that I don't know a lot of podcast production companies do.
Yeah.
And because we are intimately involved with our clients to the point where I consider them friends as well as clientele, I want to make sure that not only we're a good fit for you, but that you're a good fit for us.
Mhm.
So right now we're just continuing on that journey, making sure that we are getting voices heard that need to be heard, and hoping that the people that need to hear them will find them.
Mm. And I touch and agree with you on that and affirm that Crackers and Soup continues to produce really great podcasts. I'm gonna look up some of those podcasts that you did, because honestly, I growing up with my grandmother, what she would listen to a lot of AM radio, and so on the
Mhm,
radio dial there would be a lot of storytelling. You would
mhm,
hear, and the horse hooves, and so you would hear someone with like making the horse
mhm,
sound, and like old school soap operas, because old school soap operas used to be on the radio.
mhm,
So it was so interesting, hearing those stories, and now seeing it that it's made its way back, and their
mhm.
podcast for that. And a really great podcast for all my nerdies out here, all my blurs. Hey, um, Batman has a podcast. So like, yes, so DC made like a podcast storytelling version. I mean, it even has like Gotham like soap company, yeah, it's like has a commercial in it and everything. So yeah, it's like a podcast version of a Batman episode inside Gotham with like commercials.
That's amazing.
It is. So, yeah. So, for those of you who are blurs out here, blurs and nerds and all of the rest, there is such a thing. So, literally, I hope that that encourages someone to know there's an audience for everything.
Everything. Everything. Mhm.
There is literally an audience for everything. So, Bethany, thank you so much for taking so much time out of your day to spend with me and spend in this conversation. I hope that those of you on the other side of this, as you catch this either now or on the replay, really get into this conversation, pull out some nuggets, take some notes, get your drink of choice as you listen to this, tea or something stronger. But I hope that it blesses you and encourages you on your journey. And again, Bethany, thank you so much for taking your time out to be with me today.
Thank you. I love you. I adore you. Please reach out to Brahenda. Let her know your favorite takeaways. Reach out to me and let me know. I am a takeaway whore. Like, tell me what you learned, because I geek out on it. So
Love
please
it.
do that.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll be in touch soon, friend. Love you.
Love you. Mwah.
Bye.
Bye.